For thousands of years, elders and knowledge keepers have used stories to educate future generations. Stories and words can help heal our hearts and make Mother Earth a better place for all people. This is Healing Hearts.
Hello everyone, welcome to Healing Hearts. I'm Tracy Koga. Well, this could be a very important federal election coming up on Monday, September 20th. We have at least 75 Indigenous candidates on the ballots, and that's history. Even in Manitoba, we have 7 Métis and 2 First Nations. So, is it still difficult for Indigenous, newcomer, and marginal communities to vote? This is our topic of discussion tonight on Healing Hearts. Hello, I want to welcome all my guests, but before we get started, I want to say a very big thank you to our sponsor, The Hive. It is a rock climbing facility, and wow, what a great way to get into shape. So thank you so much for this local support. But tonight, we've got some pretty big topics to cover, and I have an amazing group of people here. So I want to say a welcome to Mary Burton from Fearless R2W, and we'll find out more about this organization, Mary, because I think it's really, really important. And I've got the lovely Lori Abraham from One Just City, and she is the Director of Indigenous Cultural Programs. And then from SEED, supporting employment and economic development. Oh, do I get a gold star? It's just SEED now, okay, for the rest of the evening. But I've got Lisbeth Ardia and Taruni Waliade, who are here to definitely talk and give us shed some light, on the immigrant and newcomer communities too, which are so important. I said in my opening, though, at least 75 Indigenous candidates on the ballot for this federal election. It is a historical number. I'm going to go to Mary first. How does this play out with the Indigenous community?
Well, I am only one person. I can't speak for the entire Indigenous community.
Oh, come on.
I can speak for myself.
Oh, yeah.
For me, it's very historic. It's a very historical moment, considering with everything that's been going on lately, with the recovery of all of those children's bodies from residential schools, child welfare, homelessness, reconciliation. All of those are very tough topics that are being discussed right now amongst our leaders. And I think that voting is a very important aspect of who we are, or not of who we are, but of a democratic process. Mm-hmm. I've said before, I'll say it again, it's a colonial system through and through, but it's the only system we got right now. Until we can bring our own systems back, this is what we've got. And as an Indigenous person, I think it's very important that all of our Indigenous people and our newcomer communities, if they are able to vote, should vote. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about Fearless R2W. What does it mean and stand for? And a little bit more about the organization.
Well, Fearless R2W was started out as a grassroots organization back in 2014. What we did was we had 4 main areas. We had advocacy, education, addiction support, and housing support. We've since changed our how we work. We still do a lot of advocacy. We still do a lot of resource finding for people who need it. If they need advocacy and they need addiction support, we find that for them. But we basically do education. We have learning circles. We have 4 of them a month, all on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. They're in person right now. Cross your fingers, because of the pandemic and the upcoming, the next possible wave. But we also do Zoom meetings as well. During the pandemic, we were doing Zoom meetings. And what we do is we do learning circles on various topics. We do system literacy, I train people on how to be advocates for themselves and for other people. Um, we are basically we basically we do parent advocacy because we believe that parents' rights, what little there are in the CFS system, are very important, and we want to help raise their voices in and help them to learn how to advocate for themselves.
Wow. Uh, what do you think, in your opinion, Mary, what needs to be done to get the Indigenous voters out more for this election?
In my opinion, I think that education is very important. Doing their homework, checking out the platforms of all of the candidates, um, learning what they're all about, and deciding who they think would be best to run this country.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get back to you. I'm going to now go to Lisbeth and Taruni to kind of give us more information on what are the barriers, or are there barriers? What are things that we can improve to get more of the newcomer, immigrant, refugee votes? Taruni.
Hi. Um, so I was thinking that as newcomers, so I came to Canada on a work permit, so I didn't have PR or citizenship when I came to Canada. And as a work permit holder, I did not have the right to vote. And as a PR holder, you do not have the right to vote. So it's only for citizens. So I think that for newcomers, if you have citizenship here in Canada, we all need to have our voices heard, right? And that is what we can do, because if we want to make changes, then we need to go out and vote for that change. We need to cast our ballot for that change. And as Mary said, before going and doing that, we do need to familiarize ourselves with the process, because back home, it's a different voting process altogether. It's very different.
Mm-hmm.
So in Canada, we are voting in Canada, so we need to learn about the process here in Canada as newcomers. And then, as Mary said, actually to know the different candidates and to know their platforms and if different ridings, right? Because you're going to vote for the person there. And for me, what is important is when I'm looking for these people, whether the values that I have, whether they align with the platform, with the values, with the morals that this candidate is supporting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I think I look at, and yeah.
Well, it's interesting, and I'll go to Elizabeth. I mean, how do you, I guess, describe democracy to a newcomer who has no idea on how a democratic country works, and I guess it's kind of like introducing them to a whole new kind of system. So, what are some of the things that you can suggest or do?
Sure, I go?
Yes, here you go.
So I think, like Taruni was saying, for a lot of as newcomers and immigrants that do have the opportunity to vote because we have Guinean citizenship, I think the way to encourage is that these are our representatives. These are people that are speaking in our behalf, and we need to hold them accountable. So that's kind of how the system and I think in a lot of countries does work that way, that we need to have these representatives speak for us for all of the issues that directly impact us. A lot of newcomers and racialized communities, and includes Indigenous peoples, immigrants, newcomers, are deeply affected by housing and lack of affordable housing. They're deeply affected for the cuts of health in the healthcare system, not having access to health cards, not having access to affordable education. So we do need to these elect representatives that can speak for us, but not only elect them and then not do anything else. We need to hold them accountable, and that is keep looking at what they're doing, send letters, and keep pushing them to make the changes that they have promised, because they impact us directly.
Yeah, it seems that we need to have a voice. I'm going to go to Lori now. One Just City does such great work. I mean, right in where, the communities that really need it. How is voting turnout in that community or in the communities that you serve?
So we operate three communities. So Osborne area, which would be our Oak Table site, the West End site, and our West Broadway site. So that's an expansive area for inner city communities. And our community members are actually even though they are within a tax bracket and experience, poverty and face homelessness, a lot of them who come through our doors are actually very educated. Homelessness and experiencing poverty is very stigmatized, but we don't really look at the story, the person's story beneath that. So a lot of these people have been through, master's degrees, some even doctorates, and who have faced mental health issues and in their later life, unfortunately experienced these issues. But, a lot of them are very, very educated and do express their interests and their values and who aligns with those values at the time. And, these are conversations that we have in our drop-ins, like a regular conversation, twice a year. We talk about, they express their concerns, they express how can we affect change. And that, that's a very small proportion of the people that we serve, right? Mm-hmm. So there's also the proportion of people who, unfortunately, like Mary said, education is very important. And so the turnout is, it's very split between who actually has access to that education. And just echoing what the lady said before me is that, these communities who are directly affected definitely need access to more education to be able to learn about what a democratic country is and how it runs. And so I agree with everything that was said. And fortunately for our communities, it is very split. So there is a kind of those who unfortunately don't have the education, and then there are those who are highly educated and express those views openly. So it is an even split.
Well, there just seems to be such a big gap. I'm going to go now. One of our guests here did have some audio trouble, and he's now come back. So let's do an introduction. You can introduce yourself to the rest.
I'm Jack Mercury, and this is my son's computer, so I really don't know how to use it that well, so that was the problem.
Oh, it was good because I was going to introduce you as Morgan, and I kept on asking, are you Jack? Are you Jack? So I thought, okay, I'll let you introduce yourself. Well, welcome, Jack. You're a little outnumbered, but let's get right to it. The Indigenous vote, it's very important, I think, and newcomer vote.
Mm-hmm. My dad fought in the Second World War for freedom. He was a Métis man. I believe he was allowed to vote, but my mother was treaty, and she went to a residential school in Brandon in the 30s, and they weren't allowed to vote until 1960. So I find that it's extremely important for us as citizens to exercise our right to vote. If you don't vote, you can't complain. Mm-hmm. But if you vote, you can raise as much hell as you want to get your voice heard. I did get a call from our candidate here, and he asked me if I was voting, and I said yes, and he asked me for who, and I actually told him that there were some things that he had done, or promises made that were not really kept, and I think it's very important to stay on top of these elected officials of ours to try and ensure that whatever promises they make, that we let them know we're watching them. Mm-hmm. And I find that a lot of friends that I've had, even family, never voted. and I couldn't understand why. And then even now, because they say that the politicians, they they say they're dishonest. Whether or not they are, I mean, they probably have certain groups that they cater to, the people that provide them with their pledges and so on, that they may look after their needs more so than just the general public, you know. And I think that's unfair. I don't think you can find any. I think it's difficult to find candidate who will serve the people and what is it? It's better to be a servant than to be a leader. And if you're going to serve, then you become a better leader.
Mm-hmm.
But only if you're not doing it for your own ambitions or whatever, you know. I think a lot of these guys go in there for that. A lot of them maybe go in there for the money or the prestige, you know. And I don't think I think a lot of them just don't really think of the people that they're looking to serve.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's lost somewhere along the campaign trail, or after they've been elected in, then they just sort of sit back and reap the benefits.
What would you like to see changed, Jack?
Well, there's probably a lot of things. I think I'd like to see everybody who's of age make their mark on that ballot, because you get when you have low turnout, sometimes the parties that campaign the hardest are the ones that get in, and they're not the ones that really have the best interests of the people at heart.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's why ever since I was of age, I voted every year, councillors, city, province, federal.
Wow.
You know, and it's based on I guess what's happened to myself and to maybe certain groups of people, you know, especially the ones that are almost that are unable to speak for themselves. And I think those are the ones too that should actually go out there and be encouraged to vote.
Yes, you're right. Well, and leading into that, I have a question. I'll throw it out to anyone that can answer it. I think maybe Taruni or Lizeth can answer this one. As a permanent resident, what can I do to participate since I can't vote? Anyone?
Okay, I'll start.
Yeah.
I think when I was a permanent resident and I had the deep desire to vote, I spoke to my friends and family members that were citizens, and that we had discussions at the table talking about what are the needs, what are the things that we have experienced and we need politicians to do and to change. It will be great for permanent residents if the day comes where we can vote. It will be an opportunity also to raise a lot of concerns that are not being addressed. I think right now what we can do is talk about it and kind of spread the word and talk about, especially right now when the elections are coming up so soon, we need to discuss what are the issues that we want our politicians to put forward and to follow up with them. That's all I got right now. I don't know if Taruni wants to add anything else.
I think I would echo what Liz said, because as I said, as a permanent resident or as a work permit holder, you don't have the right to vote here. But then you can get ready for the process. If you're thinking of applying for citizenship later on, you can get ready with the process. Because as I said, it's very different to our home country. So if you know the process, then when election time comes, you're not running around trying to figure everything out in your head, because it's complicated. Right? And then we can keep in track, like we can keep looking at the parties, the politicians, their platforms, and learn what they're proposing. And then, so let's say I'm a PR holder, I can't vote, but I'll watch the situation, and then a person will get elected, and then you can see what they're doing, And then when it comes my turn to vote, then I know, yes, the person upheld their promises, or no, they didn't. And then see how we can go forth from there. And then we can, even though I can't vote, I could still hold them accountable. I can still write letters to them. I can still do that. I can knock on their door and say, hey, you said this, what's happening?
Oh, and that's so true. Or I think join one of these organizations here and learn more, just through being in the community and learning from each other, I think is so important. Mary, I'm going to go to you now. You mentioned education. I'm wondering about the young people, the ones that are rated 18, 18 to, I don't know, maybe 30. Maybe that's a little bit too big, but is there?
I'd say you're about right in that range.
How many of those do? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We deal with a lot of young people who are aging out of care, and they're aging out of care into homelessness. They're aging out of care into the justice system. They're aging out of care into very bad situations. And we as an organization are trying to help these young people learn about the democratic process and learn about all of the other wonderful things that are going on in our community, where the resources are, how to access those resources. If they have family, to go to their families, and a lot of them have expressed a need to learn about the electoral process. So we recently had a election forum on our Zoom account, and we had 4 of the candidates. We had an NDP candidate, we had the People's Party, we had Liberal, and then we had the Communist Party members come to our forum, and we asked them the very important questions about homelessness, about reconciliation, about child welfare, which in my view, my personal view, are 3 of the more important election concerns, for lack of a better term. But I mean, it's not just those things, but those are what's on the minds of a lot of Winnipeggers, a lot of North End Indigenous people, and a lot of youth aging out of care. So we partnered with a bunch of different organizations, and we're trying to spread the education out about all the parties as much as we can, so that people can get that information that they need, the platforms, how to access these candidates' platforms, how to ask the right questions if they come knock at your door, those types of things that are pretty important, little tidbits of information to know when there's an election happening.
Yeah, well, that is so important. Those are just so many wonderful things. And Lori, you had mentioned the areas that One Just City covers, and it's a huge part of the inner city. How many of the candidates are going out there knocking on doors or being visible or showing themselves or doing anything?
So we invite, we send out those invites for the opportunity for our community members to meet them, right? So we at our One Just City annual powwow invited out, Lisa Naylor, who represents a part of the West End community, and she often will contact us to come out and be with our community members, which is really great, because this gives them the opportunity to ask those questions. And if somebody is not even sure who she is, that's their opportunity for them to meet her. Exactly. Right. So, and she's very approachable, very likable. And in those situations, we're also there to support them to be able to start those conversations. This may be somebody's first time thinking about voting. This may be somebody's first time even considering, what area represents where they live in their region. And that's a lot of information that they need help with. So in those situations, our staff are there, and they're there to help them approach these people, because often and social anxiety is an issue, mental health problems can affect those things, but they are willing and they are open to meeting and having conversations and asking the right questions. Now we're talking about mothers with children who go to school in the area who might not know the right thing to ask. So that's where we come in, and that's where we can support them and really giving them that confidence to be able to feel comfortable enough to speak to someone that represents their riding, which is something I've seen personally happen in front of my eyes, right? So it's great to see that first interaction. And then, Leah Gazan is really great within the central Uzoma. Like they are so active in the neighborhoods, and a lot of the crossover that comes from those neighborhoods, the central neighborhood, the Centennial, a lot of the folks who come through our doors who live in those areas, which is not often, but they come in and they talk about their relationship with them already. So they talk about Leah and they talk about Uzoma and they talk about the interactions that they've had with them, and from that community connection and that community effort, it really builds trust. And then so our community then hears these conversations, is encouraged to go up to Lisa Naylor and ask her important questions, right? So these are the things that we foster, and we try to help them communicate what their needs are and what their questions are, what kind of things they want to see done in their neighborhood, based off of the idea that they might not have had that information in the past, to be able to ask those things, which is really great. So, young mothers with large families that their children attend these schools, that's a really good thing to see happen. And we encourage, all of our community members to continue and to push themselves in those situations, and with our support they have. And so that's a really great thing to see.
Well, it sounds like you really are continuing that whole community thing, which is so important. We do have another question. So since ridings and voter registration is based on a home address, you probably know where I'm going with this, how does someone experiencing homelessness get registered and vote?
So within our communities, we, that's always often a thing. Homelessness isn't just one thing, it's many facets of an ever-changing wheel with many colors and shapes and different pointy ends. Like it's never a one thing that people really think. So often, for those who are experiencing homelessness for many amount of years, what we then offer is an address mailing service within our 3 locations. So that's always an option. And then we would, ask them if they're comfortable for that to represent their riding. And then again, just echoing Mary and everyone here, education is very important for them to be able to understand how that can affect their riding and where they choose to have that address as their mailing address or their residence, like that they would have their mail sent to, and is this okay for you to have this as a space where you can vote here with us? And so giving them that option is something that they would have to decide, but it's always there open for them to if they want to engage. And I'm just thinking of one individual who has received housing in the last 6 months. Unfortunately, that's an issue, is when somebody receives housing, it's very hard for them to keep that housing. And a lot of the times they don't even choose to keep that housing for themselves. They're very accustomed to their lifestyle. So this person, but this person also is very interested in voting and expressing what they feel and what they care about and what the West End represents to them. And so hearing these conversations with them, and we say, well, let's talk. Let's see, where can we register your health card? Where can we register these things too, so that you can have a voice? And we encourage them always to, we can look up where we can register you to early vote, or you can go on the 20th. And so those are conversations that we have with a person by person basis, and it's always their option. It's always their choice, right? To be able to, if that's something that they choose, to use those addresses to represent them.
and that is again a growing part of growing sector of our city, and definitely something we have to address. Jack, I was going to ask you now, the whole healing process. Maybe it's truth and reconciliation, but maybe I'm talking more about the immediate healing process of residential schools, of course. How important is that going to play in? And just to let you know, we have at least 75 Indigenous candidates across the country.
Mhm.
That's amazing. It's history. But how much is that going to be a playing card on everything?
That's a difficult question to answer. I think one of the things that we as Canadians have to do is learn more about the history of what happened. And I'm involved with Truth and Reconciliation, not with Circles for Reconciliation. And there are individuals in there that, through the number of meetings that I've attended, were not familiar with the residential schools or the 60s school or the PASS system or the Indian Act. But I think when they learn about it, it opens their eyes, it opens their minds, and I think that's when they start becoming a little bit more active. Because really, with what little I know myself, it kind of encourages me to go and read up more literature on these types of things. And I think people have to be put in a position of actually experiencing what these individuals feel. It's like, what does it feel like to lose a member of your family? When they found those graves, I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. And yet, having my mother go to a school like that, and the experiences that she told us about, made me realize that she was one of the lucky ones, to actually have come out of that. She did learn a few things, but for us to, you can't change people. You can't change people's minds. I think we have to work on individuals one at a time. And through the Circles for Reconciliation, I think these individuals that have signed up, they do have an interest. They want to know what happened. And there have been meetings where people actually wept because of the stories that they heard. And I think something like this has to be taught in schools, starting at elementary level, just so people are aware that when you look downtown, you see all these people that are homeless, that have mental health issues. That's a product of colonization, And once we realize that maybe we can make a difference by having more agencies that can assist these individuals to try and help them heal, but also help Indigenous, non-Indigenous people heal also. The answers are so they're difficult to find, But I think we have to start somewhere. We just have to open that door and walk through. And this doesn't work, we'll try this. This doesn't work, we'll try this. This works, let's do this. Let's continue on that way. But I think one of the things that we have to do is get that message out there and say, this country's kind of broken right now too. Even with this COVID issue, the protests and so on. There's just so much chaos. And I think maybe the answers are listening to people that that have experienced trauma. I'm the ones that actually have healed through their own, through their journey, what their experiences were. I find that talking about your problems with other people that have experienced them, it's a healing process, at least for myself, that if I talk about these things, I've got them off my chest. Now I got to figure out what kind of solutions I can have to try and stay on that path that I'm going on. And if I happen to meet somebody along the way that has the same thoughts, walk along beside them, not behind or in front of them. That's all I have for now.
No, you're so true in so many ways, Jack. And yes, I agree that we are definitely broken, but there are ways that we can mend and come together. For Taruni and Lisbeth, I'm listening to these stories, and this is why we actually started this program, was to bridge together Indigenous and newcomer communities together to share their lived experiences, to talk about issues, and for yourselves too. Everybody has a story on how they came here and what they've gone through. Is it like, how do you do the connections to now learning more about Canada's history? And it's not all that good.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to jump in and add what Jack was saying, that it's important to elect candidates that really follow through with truth, the calls for action that have been there for so many years, and just a few of them have been actually followed through. I think we need candidates that focus on educating immigrants and newcomers on the real history and the reality, because it's not history, but of Canada, of Turtle Island, that many of us don't know. When we arrive, we have really tainted history and education that doesn't tell the truth of Canada, and impacts a lot of the way that immigrants and newcomers think, and therefore elect candidates that are not for the people, for the community, to heal the impacts of colonialism that deeply impact Indigenous communities, but also impact everyone, including newcomers and immigrants. And I think for me, it's been kind of, as cliche as it sounds, a journey to learn about the reality and the impacts of colonialism in Treaty 1, and see how it impacts communities, and the importance of not only educating myself, but educating my family and my friends that have a lot of knowledge that has been that it's knowledge that it's not real, that doesn't tell the real history. And I think for us that do have the real information now, it's our responsibility as newcomers to inform other newcomers, of immigrants to inform other immigrants, and not put that weight on Indigenous peoples. I think that my personal story too, I think affordable, like as I was saying, affordable housing impacts refugees, impacts newcomers, and impacts Indigenous peoples, and seeing how, like I was saying before, all of this things that the system creates that affects racialized communities and Indigenous communities impacts us all. That's a way of unifying us and just kind of raising our voices together for those changes that we want to see being put forward. I'm just gonna leave it there and let Taruni speak to it.
Yeah, so to talk a little bit about my story, like when I came to Canada, I thought it was this wonderful country that I'm coming to, no issues, because my country has so much of issues, so much of bad things. And that's what I came. And then I was like, I came here, this is about 10 years ago. But then And like my first workplace, like I came to the Portage Place, this is a true story. I came to the Portage Place Mall with my mom. My mom was visiting, and I happened to call my director and tell her where I was. And the thing she told me was, "Oh my God, that is such a dangerous area. You shouldn't be there." She came prompt, like in 5 minutes, picked us up and took us back home. I was living on Grandstand. And like, I didn't understand why and when, and I didn't understand the context. I didn't know, right? And then I started university. Liz and I, we started together in 2013. And the things I had to unlearn and then relearn. It is quite challenging to unlearn something that you have learned. It's so hard, but it's a learning journey, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning, and there's lots to learn still. But that was one example, and it's like if I look at my own history, and I realize that some of the experiences that Indigenous peoples have are very similar to what newcomers have, or as from back home, if I was living back home, the experience that I would have back home: homelessness, poverty, lack of education, you name it. It's very, very similar. It's just that I identify myself as a newcomer, and Indigenous peoples identify themselves as Indigenous. But in the end, we are all the same, and then we all run to the same issues, right? So it's for newcomers, it's our responsibility to learn the truth. And it's hard because sometimes you don't know where to learn or who to ask, because sometimes depending on who you ask, you get very different stories. So for the first 3 years of my life, I believed, why should I question a Canadian person telling me all these things? Little did I know. And then at university, I learned, and it was hard, and it's still hard because some things still go on. Like if you take the CFS system, it's like it's still going on. Right?
And well, we don't have that. We don't have the answer, do we yet, Mary? I'm going to go to you. I saw that you got a little emotional listening to Jack, and this is a tough time, but like we were saying, this is a very historic time where things can change for the better.
Yes, it is. And I did get emotional because of my personal experiences. My mother was in residential school. 3 of my siblings were in residential school. I'm a survivor of the 60s coup. So all of these things put together, it impacts me. And whoever I'm going to vote for is going to have to make sure that they put these things in the forefront of their platform, and that they're prepared to have me come at them if they're not going to hold their promises.
Oh, well, I do have a question, and it says for Jack, but I'd be interested to hear everyone's opinion. So, do you think about the Truth and Reconciliation Day, which is now September 30th, being recognized or not as a boldly indifferent process, and how that will maybe impact which parties people vote for? So basically they're asking, it's been out there, it's been proclaimed September 30th, Truth and Reconciliation Day. Some are recognizing it as a day to learn, others maybe not. Do you think this will play an important part on who gets the vote? Jack?
I do think it's going to be a very important thing because, first of all, September 30th was originally Orange Shirt Day. And it should have stayed Orange Shirt Day. They should have chosen a different day for the Truth and Reconciliation Day. As you can see, I'm wearing an orange shirt. So, I think that was a pretty bold and offensive move for our government to change Orange Shirt Day to Truth and Reconciliation Day. But I have a lot of people who are like, no, it's good. So, there's people on both sides of the fence. That again is my own personal opinion. Nobody nobody needs to agree with me. I don't care if you agree with me or not. It's my personal opinion. And yeah, like we're all entitled to have our opinions, and that's mine. And I really think that they should really consider making Truth and Reconciliation Day a different day.
Okay, thank you. Lori.
So I feel like the Truth and Reconciliation Day, yes, I agree that it will have an impact on this election. I feel like I'm gonna side with Mary that there's a lot of different ways to address these things, and throwing out that this new recognized day should have been thought out and planned a little bit in a little longer period of time. Our country this whole year has been rocked, and there's a lot of healing that has to come before we start to make plans about how we address reconciliation. And I feel like there's probably going to be a lot of people jumping on the vote for the purpose of who is going to be accountable for reconciliation. And I think that those are questions that is really hard to answer. So in our circles, our reconciliation circles, it's a really tough question to answer. Is how do we hold our government and our elected officials accountable to be able to focus on these things, and without just one day, it's going to take years and years of work. And so I often tell people, when they ask those hard questions, is let's not think of it as a destination, but a practice. And so instead of one day a year where we practice this, it has to be practicing throughout our entire lives, so that it becomes like riding a bike that we can eventually get back on no matter what, and like it was yesterday, and remember how to do those things and how to act within our communities, and hold our education system accountable to be able to tell the truth of the history in Canada. And right now I just want to encourage young people to be able to jump on that opportunity to be able to use their voices to elect an official who they believe and hold accountable throughout the year, not just for one day, throughout the year. And even survivors, many of them may or may not have voted before in their lives. And so this is really our opportunity to be able to encourage them to whatever their beliefs are and whatever their values are, and whatever riding they live in, whatever province, whichever, even if it's on a reservation, like there's things that you can reach out to be able to use your voice to talk about things like education, access to clean drinking water. Like these are things that should not be in the 2021 that we are living in, so inaccessible for so many people. So I just encourage everyone who's out there, to really to reach out to somebody who you trust, who can help you make an informed decision, and to cast your ballot and really believe in that person, and reach out to them and build a connection with them, so that you're comfortable in a year's time to be able to ask them the same questions and check in, where you left off. And this month is going to be hard leading up into the 30th. It's going to be hard. So for a lot of people, with the time of elections coming around, have conversations that are hard, even if they're hard, push through them and have conversations and encourage people to do that. So.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Lori. So well said. Jack, the question was for you, but I, gave it to the rest of the group just to hear everybody's opinion.
Okay. I'm going to wear an orange shirt anyway.
Good.
On September 30th. But I also think that it should be a day of reflection, not just a holiday. Because people go shopping on holidays. They do things on holidays. It should be a day of reflection on what that shirt means, and who it was meant for. Will it affect the election? You're going to have your hardcore liberals, your hardcore conservatives, NDP that are going to vote for their party. I think it's the other ones that are undecided, or the ones that actually think about the issues that'll make the difference in who gets elected. And I guess that's where the chips, we'll see where the chips fall, right?
No doubt. Yes. Taruni?
So I sometimes wonder when governments make these changes, who they actually consult and ask. Because it's true, like people just change stuff haphazardly sometimes without thinking, and you don't know whether you are being offensive, whether you are hurting people some more, right? So sometimes communities do need to get consulted, and meaningful consultation, not just saying, okay, hey, okay, I have this conversation and then go and do whatever you want with it, right? Meaningful consultation, because voices need to be heard. They need to be respected. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. And Lisa?
Well, I don't think I have a lot to add. Everything that everyone said, it's very well said. I guess that my concern with these proposals and changes are they being performative, or are they being real? And that's where I think we as citizens, we need to kind of follow and push, and like Mary was saying, like, I don't care what other people say, but I have to voice what I think, and that's what we need to do. But I think we're done with performative actions. We need real action.
I do have one last question, and feel free, anyone, to jump in on this. Do any of the guests ever challenge or remind elected leaders after the election is over? So I guess, again, I think someone mentioned, you didn't do any of these things that you promised. Taruni? Or maybe
I do all the time.
you do it all the time. Good for you.
All the time. I request meetings with our leaders. If they don't want to give me a meeting, I barge their office and I sit there until I get a meeting. Yes, I do keep our elected officials on their toes.
So everyone, Mary has all the leaders on speed dial, so she'll give out all of those numbers. So start those calls now. How about One Just City? Lori?
Yeah, so often, our community events, like our summer events, are very large and expansive, like through 3 communities. So I'm just going to encourage, like, to keep, if you're part of an organization, keep sending those invites, and keep creating opportunities for those panel discussions or discussions to happen within your organization for community to connect with, the folks in their writing. And that's what, like, we really love to do, and we really love to see their presence out in any event that we do have. So it's super exciting to be able to hear conversations like this happen, like, for the first time, is somebody who's talking about education for their children in the next, like, 16 years, somebody who's talking about housing for the first time, who's never had conversations like that before. It's exciting to hear those things happen. So keep creating opportunities for our community members who represent so much diverse populations, to be able to have that voice and to be able to speak to someone as if it was your neighbor.
Oh,
So
that's great. And how about Seed?
We at Seed get involved in a lot of advocacy, and we have letter writing that we host once a month, and where we come together with these concerns, and we invite people in the community and other organizations to come and write with us, to representatives, about issues that are happening in our communities, in the province, and also in the country. And we advocate for newcomers as well. We have a program that is the one that I'm part of, it's called Recognition Counts, and offers financial loans for skilled immigrants. And skilled immigrants face a lot of barriers getting their education recognized in Canada. So we also advocate for them, and we talk to them, and we put their stories out So politicians also think about this and not making it as expensive and lengthy that makes it impossible for newcomers and immigrants to actually work in their fields.
Oh, perfect. And Jack, to wrap things up, words of wisdom. Besides, go vote.
I've only had one call from a candidate. That was it. And he's just down the street, so I'm just gonna, I know where his office is. so I might just go drop in on him.
Okay.
Everything that's been said here, I think we're basically all think the same way, and I think it's important, like Lori said, that the community be made aware of the things that go on. I mean, we can't all read everything. Sometimes somebody will catch a little snippet of something and ask if you've heard about it, and you say, no, I haven't. Well, you should check into it. And I think these are the things that we have to do. I think we have to educate ourselves and the people in our neighborhoods about the things that go on. I also think it's extremely important that the political system should be taught in schools, so these young people know how the process works, what the procedures are, and so on. It does not have to be complicated. Just simplify it for them so they know, so that in the future, if they have any questions or if they feel that things aren't being done right, that even themselves they can speak out. Kind of like climate change. That young girl from Scandinavia, it to be so big, with other children, that we have nothing to fear but fear itself, as John F. Kennedy said. And I think it's fear that's preventing us from speaking up, because one, we don't want to seem like, we don't want to think we look stupid when we say something, but I think a lot of people are intelligent. Sometimes they can't express themselves, but that's what I guess some of us are there for, to give them a hand, right?
Well,
And then to walk side by side. Those are the types of things I think that we need to ensure that what these politicians promise will get them to act on those issues that they talked about, or that they raised, or that we raised. So that's all I got to say.
No, it's all true, and I think that this will be a very important election, and it'll be wonderful if this little conversation here can move people. We know of organizations, Fearless, R2W, One Just City, Seed. Go to their websites, give them a call. Call Mary. She answers all her calls. We'll give Jack's phone number, okay? And you can call Jack. No, but I just want to mention too that IPW, or Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, would like to announce that there is an event happening tomorrow at Central Park at 1 p.m. and it's put on by the Ethnocultural Council of Manitoba, and it is in doing just this, giving you, the community, information on how to vote. If you've got a citizen, if you're a citizen, you have citizenship, you have the right to vote. You can find information, I believe, at Got Citizenship, Go Vote Facebook page, or you can go to ipwinnipeg.org for more information. It's a free event, and maybe you'll see people like Mary and Taruni and Lizeth and Jack there. So it's 1 o'clock tomorrow in the afternoon at Central Park. So thank you all so much for tonight. Again, it's been an amazing conversation, and again, I hope it encourages more people to vote. So have a safe and healthy evening, and thank you so much. Thank you for watching Healing Hearts.